Get on the mat.
Yan's voice cut through the dojo. I didn't move. He smiled. That was the problem with men like Yan. They mistook hesitation for fear. He raised one padded glove and tapped it against my chest, right over the pale scar running beneath my hoodie.
You've been hiding back there all night, he said. Come on, let everybody see what you're made of.
A few people laughed. I looked toward the bleachers. My mother was sitting in the front row. She was smiling. Go ahead, Anna, Martha called. He's only trying to help you. That hurt more than anything Yan had said. Because my mother knew. She knew about my knee. She knew about the scars. She knew I hadn't slept through an entire night in 14 months. She knew I had come home from the army carrying things I couldn't explain. And she still wanted me standing in front of this man. For her, this wasn't about protecting me. It was about keeping Yan happy. I was 35 years old. I looked exhausted enough to pass for 50. Gray sweatpants. Old hoodie. Hair tied back without care. A limp I couldn't hide, no matter how hard I tried. To everyone in that room, I looked broken. Yan had no idea how wrong he was. 14 months earlier, I had been kneeling in a desert beside a 19-year-old soldier named David Miller. His leg had been torn open. His blood was everywhere. I had both hands pressed against the wound, trying to keep him alive while helicopters tore the sky apart above us. Stay with me, David. He looked at me. Then he didn't. That memory still lived behind my eyes. So when Yan stepped toward me that night, I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of what he might wake up. And 24 hours earlier, I had been sitting in a VA clinic, listening to a doctor tell me exactly what I needed to do. Reconnect with your family, Dr. Elias Vance had said. He slid a sheet of paper across the desk. Grounding, routine, civilian support. I stared at the words. Your mother and her husband can help you reestablish normal life. Normal. That word almost made me laugh. I had spent my adult life learning how to keep people alive under conditions where normal didn't exist. Now a man in a pressed blue shirt wanted me to sit at a kitchen table and pretend everything was fine. Give the family environment a chance, he said. So I did. The next morning, my mother put burnt bacon in front of me. The smell of Jan's beer still clung to the hallway carpet. My father's old oak table sat in the middle of the kitchen. Arthur Cooper had built it himself. He had died years earlier. Jan now kept his coffee mug exactly where my father used to put his newspaper. Martha sat across from me. Why won't you just try? I didn't answer. Jan is a good man. I looked at her. He's strong, she continued. Just like your father. That sentence almost broke something inside me. Arthur had spent his life protecting people. Jan spent his proving that other people were weaker than him. But I said nothing. Martha dabbed at her eyes. He runs that martial arts class. He told me he could help you. I looked down at my hands. Old scars crossed my knuckles. Hands that had once stopped arteries from bleeding. Hands that had carried wounded soldiers. Now they were washing burnt eggs from a plate. Just one session, she whispered. I stood. Fine. That was how I ended up in the dojo. And that was how I met Liam. 16 years old. Skinny. Nervous. Always trying to disappear. Yan called him onto the mat. Jab. Liam hesitated. Hit me. Huh. The boy threw a weak punch. Yan slapped it aside, then grabbed his collar and threw him down. Liam hit the mat hard. The air left his lungs. He curled up, struggling to breathe. The room went quiet, except for one sound. My mother's applause. Yan stood over Liam, chest out, soaking in the attention. I watched him. Not as a fighter, as a medic. His stance was wrong. His left knee was unstable. His weight was too far back. His breathing was sloppy. He wasn't dangerous. He was pretending to be. Then his eyes found mine. He smiled. He had finally found someone else he wanted to humiliate. He started walking toward me. Anna. The room blurred. The fluorescent light stretched into the sound of helicopter blades. Hot sand. Blood. David. I closed my eyes. 4 things I could see. 3 sounds. 2 breaths. 1 memory. My father's hand on my shoulder. You use your hands to shield the weak. Arthur's voice. Steady. Calm. You don't hurt people just to prove you're strong. I opened my eyes. The dojo returned. Yan was standing in front of me. My mother was smiling behind him. And Yan lifted his gloves. Your turn. I stepped onto the mat. He grinned. He still thought I was afraid. He had no idea that for the first time that night, I was completely calm. The room went silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence. The kind that comes when everyone suddenly realizes they may have been watching the wrong person. Yan stood 3 feet in front of me, his red gloves raised. He was waiting for me to panic. I didn't. Come on, he said. I looked at him. I don't want to fight you. A few people exchanged glances. Yan laughed. That's what I thought. He turned toward the room. You see this? He pointed at me. This is what happens when someone spends too long hiding behind excuses. My mother smiled weakly from the bleachers. Anna, she said, just listen to him. I looked at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. That hurt more than Yan's words. Because somewhere inside me, a stupid little part of me was still waiting for my mother to stand up. To say enough. To tell him to leave me alone. She didn't. Instead, she folded her hands in her lap and watched. Yan turned back. You heard her. He stepped closer. You're embarrassing yourself. I stayed still. He leaned toward me. You know what your problem is? No. You think surviving something makes you special. The room seemed to shrink. My jaw tightened. Yan saw it. He smiled. There it is. He had found the wound. You went overseas. You saw some bad things. You came home damaged. Now everybody has to walk around you like you're made of glass. He tapped my chest. You're not a hero. Another tap. You're a burden. My mother whispered his name. Not to stop him. To warn him. But he was too far inside his own performance to notice. I looked at his hands. Then his feet. Then his breathing. I knew what he was going to do before he did. He just didn't know that. I said I don't want to fight. Yan's face hardened.
Then throw one punch.
No.
Come on.
No. His voice dropped. Are you afraid? I almost smiled.
Not because it was funny.
Because he had no idea what fear looked like to me anymore. I'd seen fear in 19-year-old soldiers. I'd seen it in civilians trapped beneath rubble. I'd seen it in a man's eyes when he realized he was bleeding faster than anyone could stop it. Yan wasn't frightening me. He was reminding me of something. And I didn't like what he was reminding me of. His shoulder moved. My body reacted before my mind finished processing it. He swung. A wide, ugly, looping strike. I stepped forward. The glove passed beside my ear. Yan's eyes widened. He had expected me to retreat. Instead, I was inside his reach. I caught his balance. A short movement. A turn. His foot slipped. The next thing he knew, his back hit the mat. Hard. The entire room inhaled at once. I followed him down. Not because I wanted to hurt him. Because my training told me to control the threat. His arm was trapped. His weight was wrong. His breathing was changing. I knew exactly how vulnerable he was. And suddenly, I wasn't seeing Yan anymore. I was seeing David. Dust. Lead. A helicopter screaming overhead. My hands covered in red. Stay with me. David's eyes had been looking at me. Then they hadn't. I blinked. Yan was still beneath me. His face was turning red. My forearm was close to his throat. His hands clawed at my sleeve. The room disappeared again. For one terrible second, the soldier inside me took control. A tiny shift. A little more pressure. That was all it would take. I could feel how easily his airway could collapse. I could feel his panic. And some dark part of me whispered, "Finish it." Then I heard my father's voice. "You use your hands to shield the weak." I froze. Not because Yan deserved mercy. Because Arthur had taught me that strength without control was just another form of violence. I released him. Yan rolled away, coughing violently. I stood. My knee popped. The sound echoed through the room. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. Martha rushed toward Yan. Oh my God. She knelt beside him. Are you okay? Yan grabbed his throat. She attacked me. I looked at him. You attacked me first. You tried to choke me. You swung at my head. He looked toward the room, Did everybody see that? Nobody answered. That was worse for him. The audience he'd been performing for had just watched the entire thing. They knew. Yan had started it. Martha looked at me. What is wrong with you? I stared at her. He tried to hit me. He was teaching you. No. My voice stayed quiet. This wasn't teaching. Yan coughed. You're unstable. That word landed differently. Not because I believed him. Because I knew exactly what he was doing. He was building the story. The unstable veteran. The damaged daughter. The dangerous woman. The innocent husband. He wanted everyone to remember the moment I put him on the floor and forget why. I looked around the room. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others looked afraid. Jan saw it too. He straightened. You all saw what she did. He pointed at me. She just attacked me for no reason. Liam looked down, then slowly raised his hand. She didn't. Yan turned. What? Liam swallowed. You hit her first. The room changed. Jan stared at the boy. You want to go home too? Liam's face went white. I stepped between them. Leave him alone. Yan laughed. Look at you. He shook his head. Still playing hero. I turned away. I didn't want another fight. I didn't want to prove anything. I just wanted my keys. I walked toward the lockers. Behind me, I heard Martha crying. Jan, please. Then, silence. Then, a scrape. Plastic against concrete. My body recognized the sound instantly. I stopped. I didn't turn around. A folding chair. Yan had grabbed one. His breathing was ragged. His pride was gone. What remained was something uglier. He wanted to hurt me because I'd embarrassed him. I lowered my center of gravity. My hands opened. My mind became quiet. One more step. That was all he needed. I would turn, catch the chair, end it. Then a voice exploded from the back office. Put it down. Yan froze. So did I. Robert Sterling stepped through the doorway. He wasn't the largest man I'd ever seen, but somehow the room seemed to get smaller when he entered it. He walked with a pronounced limp. His face was weathered. His eyes were not. They were sharp. Cold. Experienced. Put it down, he repeated. Yan lowered the chair. Boss, she attacked me. Robert looked at him, then at the bruise already forming across his throat. Then at me. He didn't say anything. He simply studied my stance. My feet. My shoulders. My hands. Something changed in his expression. Recognition. You weren't taught that here. I said nothing. He looked at me again. You military? My throat tightened. Former. Medic? I stared at him. How do you know? Robert's eyes moved to my knee, then to my hands, then back to my face. Because I knew someone who moved exactly like you. My heart stopped. Who? He looked toward my mother, then back at me. Arthur Cooper. Oh. The name hit harder than anything Yan had said. My father. Robert's voice softened. He was my friend. I couldn't speak. Robert looked at Yan, then at the chair, then back at me, and quietly said the words that made the entire room understand what they had actually been watching. You weren't fighting him. He pointed at Yan. You were stopping him. Yan's face went pale. Robert took another step forward. And if you hadn't stopped yourself, He glanced at Yan's throat. We'd be calling an ambulance right now. Nobody moved. Then Robert turned toward my mother. Martha. She looked up. You know what your husband did. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Robert's voice hardened. Then stop pretending your daughter is the problem. Yan stumbled backward. His face had gone pale. One hand went to the darkening bruise across his neck. Boss. His voice came out rough. He pointed at me. She attacked me. She's crazy. Robert didn't even look at him. His eyes stayed on me. He studied my posture. My shoulders were relaxed. My hands were empty. My feet were planted exactly where they needed to be. There was no panic in my face. No anger. Just control. Robert's expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. That, he said quietly, was textbook close contact survival training. The room went completely still. Robert finally looked at Yan. It is designed to neutralize an aggressive threat with maximum efficiency. Martha scrambled to her feet. But she attacked him. Robert's head snapped toward her. Shut your mouth, Martha. She recoiled. The words hit her harder than a slap. Robert pointed toward Yan. If this girl hadn't exercised absolute restraint, I'd be doing chest compressions on you right now while we waited for an ambulance. Yan opened his mouth. Robert cut him off. She let you live. His voice became colder. And you picked up a chair to hit a woman from behind. Nobody in the room moved. The suburban dads. The gym moms. The teenagers. Everyone stood, frozen. Yan looked around desperately. He had lost the room. Not because I had beaten him, because everyone had finally seen him clearly. He wasn't the man he'd spent months pretending to be. He was a bully who had chosen someone he thought couldn't fight back. Then Robert turned toward my mother. Martha was standing with both hands over her mouth. Tears were running down her face. Robert stared at her. Arthur Cooper was my friend. The name hit the room like something physical. I didn't cry. My hands didn't shake. But my eyes burned. It was the first time in more than a year that I'd heard my father's name spoken in this town with the respect it deserved. Robert continued. Arthur was a good man. His voice softened for the first time. He spent his whole life taking care of people who couldn't take care of themselves. He looked at Yan. And this man you brought into his house? His lip curled. He's nothing but a cheap bully playing dress-up. Martha's face crumpled. Robert didn't stop. You stood there and let a coward stomp all over Arthur's memory. Martha let out a broken sob. I watched her. Part of me wanted to comfort her. That old instinct was still there. The daughter who had spent her entire life trying to make her mother happy. But something inside me finally understood. Her pain wasn't mine to carry. Robert turned away from her. He looked at Yan. You're done in my building, Schmidt. Jan stared at him. Boss. Pack your gear. Robert's voice was final. Get out. Jan didn't argue. That was how frightened he was. He bent down and grabbed his duffel bag. His hands were trembling. The black belt he'd been so proud of suddenly looked ridiculous around his waist. Martha followed him. She was crying quietly. Neither of them looked at me. The heavy glass door swung shut behind them. Click. Silence. The remaining people began collecting their bags. Nobody wanted to meet my eyes. I didn't care. The pressure I'd been carrying for 14 months was finally beginning to lift. Robert walked slowly across the blue vinyl mat. His boots made a dull rhythm against the floor. He stopped a few feet from me. He didn't offer a handshake. Didn't give me some empty motivational speech. He simply looked at me. You look just like Arthur. My throat tightened. Robert reached into the breast pocket of his flannel shirt. He pulled out a small, worn piece of cardstock. He handed it to me. I looked down. It wasn't a business card. Just a plain white square with an address printed in cheap black ink. A closed group, Robert said. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5 in the morning. I looked up. Where? A basement a few miles from here. He paused. No loudmouths. A faint smile appeared. No buzzing fluorescent lights. He looked toward the empty mat. Just people who understand what it means to come home carrying things nobody else can see. My fingers closed around the card. Veterans? Some. Medics? Some. He looked directly at me. People who understand the sandbox. The card felt heavier than it should have. Like a lifeline. Why are you giving this to me? Robert's eyes softened. Because your father once pulled me out of a burning truck overseas. I stared at him. He saved my life. He tapped the card. Maybe it's my turn to do something for his kid. I nodded. Thank you. Robert returned the nod. That was it. No dramatic goodbye. No promises. I pushed through the glass door. Cold air hit my face. The parking lot was almost empty. Orange streetlights reflected off the damp asphalt. I walked toward my old rusted sedan. The driver's door creaked when I opened it. I slid inside. Closed the door. And suddenly, the entire world disappeared. No voices. No dojo. No Yan. No Martha. Just me. I placed both hands on the worn steering wheel. Then I waited. Because I knew what came next. It always came after a surge of adrenaline. The shaking, the ringing, the phantom smell of copper and hot sand, the memories. I closed my eyes. 1 minute passed. Nothing. 2 minutes. Still nothing. I slowly opened my eyes. My hands were perfectly still. No shaking. No static drilling through my skull. Nothing. For the first time since I'd returned to Ohio, my mind was completely quiet. I looked down at Robert's card, then at the photograph of my father taped beneath the dashboard. I finally understood what had happened inside that dojo. I hadn't become a monster. I hadn't lost control. I had stopped someone. Then I had stopped myself. And that second part mattered more. For 14 months, I'd been afraid that my anger meant I was broken. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it meant I'd been carrying too much for too long. I turned the key. The old engine coughed. Once. Twice. Then it roared to life. The rough, mechanical rattle filled the car. I listened. For once, the sound didn't remind me of gunfire. It didn't remind me of helicopters. It didn't remind me of war. It sounded like something alive. I looked at the road ahead. Then I remembered something Robert had said. People who understand the sandbox. I didn't know what waited for me at that basement. But for the first time in 14 months, I wanted to find out. I pulled out of the parking lot. And behind me, the dojo disappeared into the darkness. But I had no idea that walking away from that building would be the first real step toward getting my life back. The next morning, I almost didn't go. I sat in my car outside the basement for 20 minutes, staring at the address Robert had given me. 5 a.m. No sign. No parking lot lights. No reason for anyone normal to be there at that hour. I nearly drove away. Then I remembered what Robert had said. People who understand what you came home carrying. I opened the door. The basement smelled like coffee, rubber mats, and old sweat. There were 6 people inside. A woman with a scar above her eyebrow. An older man with a prosthetic leg. A former Marine wrapping his hands. Nobody looked at me twice. Nobody asked what unit I'd served with. Nobody asked what happened overseas. Nobody asked why I walked with a limp. One man simply moved his bag off a bench. Sit. I did. That was it. No speech. No introduction. No pity. For the first time since coming home, I didn't have to explain myself. We trained quietly. Breathing. Movement. Balance. Control. The first time I hit the heavy bag, I expected something inside me to snap. It didn't. I hit it again. Then again. My breathing stayed steady. My knee hurt. But it was familiar pain. Civilian pain. The kind I could understand. When the session ended, the Marine tossed me a towel. Same time Thursday? I nodded. Yeah. He smiled.
See you then.
Nobody told me I was brave. Nobody called me damaged. Nobody told me how lucky I was to be alive. They simply expected me to come back. And somehow, that felt better than sympathy. When I got home, my mother was waiting. She sat at the kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a coffee mug.
You went to Robert's group.
I stopped. How do you know?
Jan called me.
Of course. I put my keys down.
What did he tell you?
That you're unstable.
I almost laughed.
He attacked me with a chair. He says you provoked him.
He swung first.
Martha looked away.
You don't understand how difficult this has been.
I stared at her.
For who?
She didn't answer. You came home angry, she said.
I came home injured. You don't talk to anyone.
I don't know how.
You push people away.
I shook my head. No. She looked at me. I stopped pretending. Her eyes filled with tears.
You're not the daughter I raised.
That sentence hurt. Not because it was true. Because some part of me had spent my entire life trying to be exactly what she wanted. I looked around the kitchen. My father's chair was still there. His old watch still sat in the drawer. The oak table he'd built with his own hands was beneath my palms. I remembered him saying, "You don't have to make everyone understand you." I took a breath. "Mom!" She looked up. I didn't change because I wanted to. Then why? Because I survived something. She shook her head.
You don't know what you're doing to this family.
That was when I finally understood. She wasn't asking me to heal. She was asking me to become convenient. Quiet. Predictable. Easy to live with. Someone who wouldn't force her to confront what Yan had done. I stood. I'm sorry you're hurting. She looked surprised. But I can't fix it for you. She started crying. I didn't move. That was new. For years, her tears had been a command. If she cried, I apologized. If she was angry, I changed. If she was disappointed, I tried harder. Not this time. I walked upstairs. The next afternoon, Yan came back. Not alone. 2 men from the dojo stood behind him. I saw them through the window. My stomach tightened. He wasn't there to apologize. He was there to control the story. He wanted witnesses. He wanted people who would hear his version first. He wanted them to see me as the unstable veteran who had attacked an innocent instructor. I understood the tactic immediately. I stayed inside. Yan shouted from the driveway, "Anna!" I didn't answer. "Come outside!" Still nothing. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You think Robert is going to protect you forever?" I picked up my phone. Called Robert. He answered on the second ring. "Stay inside." "I am. I'll be there." 5 minutes later, Robert's truck rolled into the driveway. He got out slowly. Jan turned toward him. Boss, don't. Robert walked between Jan and the house. You've already been told to stay away. She attacked me. You came here. She needs help. Robert looked at him. No. His voice was flat. You need an audience. One of the men behind Jan looked uncomfortable. Robert noticed. You two came here to watch this? Neither answered. Then watch carefully. He pointed toward Jan. This is what a bully looks like after someone finally says no. Jan's face darkened. You don't know what happened. I was there. You weren't outside. I saw enough. Jan stepped forward. Robert didn't move. You want to keep doing this? Jan stopped. Robert's voice became quieter. Then understand something. He pointed toward the house. You don't get to turn her trauma into a weapon just because it makes your story easier. Jan stared at him. For the first time, I saw something different in his face. Not anger. Fear. He had realized Robert wasn't going to protect his reputation anymore. One of the men behind him quietly walked back toward his car. The other followed. Jan looked around. His audience was gone. He had nothing left. He got into his truck and drove away. Robert waited until the road was empty. Then he looked at me through the window. You okay? I nodded. I think so. You don't have to prove anything. I opened the door. I'm starting to understand that. He smiled. Good. Weeks passed. The nightmares didn't disappear. But they changed. Instead of waking up screaming, I'd sometimes wake up sweating. Instead of losing an entire morning, I'd lose 10 minutes. Then 5. Then sometimes nothing. The basement became routine. Tuesday. Thursday. 5 in the morning. I learned how to breathe through memories instead of fighting them. I learned that a trigger wasn't an order. A memory wasn't the present. And pain wasn't proof that I was broken. Then one morning, Robert handed me something. The photograph. My father standing beside him years ago. Both of them covered in dust. Arthur's hand rested on Robert's shoulder. I stared at it. You keep it, Robert said. I can't. You can. He sat beside me. Your father saved my life. I looked at him. What happened? Robert was quiet for a moment. Burning vehicle. He touched his leg. I couldn't get out. And Dad pulled you out? He did. I looked at the photograph again. He never told me. Your father didn't tell stories about himself. That made me smile. It sounded exactly like him. Robert looked at me. He'd be proud of you. I looked away. I didn't want to cry. But I did. Quietly. Robert didn't pretend not to notice. He simply sat there. That was enough. For years, I'd believed my father's memory was something I had to protect. Now I understood. It wasn't fragile. It had survived without me. The person I'd been fighting to become was never gone. She had just been buried beneath everything I'd carried home. And for the first time, I was beginning to uncover her. Then I drove home. I knew what I had to do. Not because my mother had changed. Not because Jan had apologized. Not because the world suddenly understood me. Because I finally understood myself. I walked into the house. Martha was in the living room. I put my bag down. I need to tell you something. She looked up. And for the first time in 14 months, I wasn't asking my mother for permission. I put my bag down beside the door. My mother was sitting in the living room. The television was on, but she wasn't watching it. She looked at me. You're staying somewhere else now. It wasn't a question. Yes? She nodded slowly. Because of Jan? Yeah. Because of everything. Her eyes dropped to the floor. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said the sentence I'd been expecting. Your father wouldn't want this. I felt my chest tighten. Don't use Dad to make me feel guilty. I wasn't. You were. She looked away. I sat across from her. I know you were afraid. She looked back at me. Afraid of what? Being alone? Her face changed. I knew I'd hit the truth. You married Jan because you didn't want to be alone after Dad died. She said nothing. And then, little by little, you started protecting him instead of yourself. Her eyes filled with tears. I thought he was helping you. He wasn't. I know that now. The words were barely audible. I looked at her. For the first time, she wasn't defending Jan. She wasn't telling me I was unstable. She wasn't asking me to forgive him. She was simply sitting there with the consequences of what she'd allowed. I should have protected you, she whispered. I looked down. That was the sentence I'd wanted to hear for 14 months. But hearing it now didn't erase anything. I needed you to believe me. I know. I needed you to see that I wasn't broken. She wiped her eyes. I was scared to see it. Why? Because if you weren't broken. She stopped. I waited. Then I'd have to admit I was wrong. The room went quiet. That was the first completely honest conversation we'd had since I came home. I stood. I don't hate you, Mom. She looked up. But I can't live here. I understand. I need distance. She nodded. At the front door, I stopped. Mom? Yes? Dad would have wanted you to be happy. She started crying again. This time, I didn't turn away. But I didn't stay either. I walked outside. The cold air hit my face. For once, leaving didn't feel like running away. It felt like choosing myself. I drove to the basement the following Tuesday. Robert was already there. He looked at me. You came back. I said I would. He smiled. Good. The group was smaller that morning. Liam was there too. He was standing beside the heavy bag, looking nervous. When he saw me, he smiled. I asked Robert if I could come. I looked at him. Why? He shrugged. I don't want to become like Yan. That answer caught me off guard. Robert glanced at me. Then at Liam. Show her. Liam stepped toward the bag. His first punch was weak. He pulled it back immediately. I shook my head. Don't think about being strong. He looked at me. Then what? Think about being controlled. He tried again. Better. Again. He hit. Again. Again. His breathing steadied. When he finished, he looked at me. Was that good? It was honest. He smiled. For the first time, I understood why Robert had given me that address. This place wasn't teaching people how to hurt others. It was teaching people what to do with the strength they already had. And somehow, helping Liam made something inside me settle. Maybe I didn't have to erase what the army had taught me. Maybe I just needed to decide what those lessons were for now. Weeks passed. The nightmares didn't vanish, but they became quieter. Instead of waking up screaming, sometimes I woke up breathing hard. Instead of losing an entire morning, I lost 10 minutes. Then 5. Then sometimes nothing. My therapist noticed. You're not fighting the memories anymore. I still hate them. You don't have to like them. She smiled. You just have to stop treating them like orders. That sentence stayed with me. A trigger wasn't an order. A memory wasn't the present. Pain wasn't proof that I was broken. One morning, Robert handed me an old photograph. My father stood beside him. Both were younger. Both looked exhausted. Both were covered in dust. I stared at Arthur's face. You keep it, Robert said. I can't. You can. I shook my head. He'd want you to have it. I touched the edge of the photograph. What happened here? Robert looked at the picture. Your father pulled me out of a burning truck. I looked at him. He never told me. He wasn't the kind of man who told stories about himself. That made me smile. Yeah. Robert studied me. You know what I remember most? What? He didn't ask whether I was worth saving. I looked at him. He just did it. My throat tightened. That sounded exactly like Arthur. Robert leaned back. That's the man you came from. I looked at the photograph again. For years, I'd thought I had to become somebody extraordinary to make my father proud. But maybe I'd misunderstood him. Maybe he had never wanted me to become invincible. Maybe he only wanted me to stay human. I drove home that afternoon. The photograph sat on the passenger seat. I kept glancing at it at red lights. Arthur wasn't telling me to fight. He was reminding me why I had learned to fight in the first place. To protect, not punish. That night, I opened an old box of family photographs. Most of them were ordinary. Birthdays, holidays, school pictures, my father fixing the porch, my mother laughing in the kitchen, me at 16, sitting on the hood of Arthur's truck. Then I found one I'd never seen before. Arthur was standing beside Robert. And on the back, in my father's handwriting, were 6 words. Some people survive because others show up. I sat there for a long time. Then I cried. Not the kind of crying I'd been doing since I came home. Not anger. Not grief. Relief. Because for the first time, I could see my life as something more than what happened to me. I had survived. But survival wasn't supposed to be the end. It was supposed to be the beginning. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. No nightmare. No ringing. No phantom helicopter. Just silence. I got dressed, walked outside, and stood beside my car. The sky was still dark. For a moment, I waited for fear. It didn't come. I looked at Robert's photograph on the passenger seat, then at the road ahead, and I knew I had one final thing to do. Go back to my mother's house. Not to forgive everything. Not to forget. But to finally say what I'd been too afraid to say. That I wasn't broken. And I wasn't coming back to be fixed. I drove back to my mother's house just after sunrise. The street looked exactly the way I remembered it. Same cracked sidewalk. Same maple tree beside the driveway. Same porch where my father used to sit on summer evenings. For a moment, I almost turned around. Then I remembered why I was there. I knocked. My mother opened the door. She looked surprised to see me. Anna.
Can I come in?
She stepped aside. I walked into the house. Everything felt smaller than I remembered. The living room. The hallway. Even the old photographs on the wall. Jan was gone. His boots weren't beside the door. His black belt wasn't hanging near the garage. His coffee mug was gone from the kitchen counter. The house finally looked like my childhood again. My mother sat at the kitchen table. I sat across from her. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, she said, "I thought you weren't coming back." "I didn't come back to stay." She nodded. "I know." I looked at her. "I came because I don't want us to leave things like this." She lowered her eyes. "I know I hurt you." "Yes." She swallowed. "I thought Jan was helping." "He wasn't." "I know." Her voice broke. "I thought if he could make you stronger, you'd be able to go back to your old life." I almost smiled. "My old life doesn't exist anymore." She looked at me. "I know that now." For the first time, she wasn't trying to argue. She wasn't defending Jan. She wasn't telling me I was unstable. She was listening. "I was scared," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of being alone." I understood. Not enough to excuse what she'd done, but enough to understand it. "You married him because you were afraid of losing Dad completely." She nodded. "And then I started protecting the marriage instead of protecting you." I looked down at the table. My father's table. The same scratches were still there. "I needed you to believe me." "I know. I needed you to see that I wasn't broken." She wiped her eyes. I was afraid that if I admitted you weren't broken, I'd have to admit I was wrong. That was the first completely honest thing she'd said to me in years. I reached across the table. Not to erase what happened. Not to pretend it hadn't. Just to let her know I heard her. I don't hate you. She looked at me. But I can't live here. I understand. I need my own life. She nodded. I know. I stood. At the doorway, I stopped. Mom? Yes? Dad would have wanted you to be happy. She started crying. I let her. For once, I didn't feel responsible for making the tears stop. I walked outside. The door closed behind me. And nothing inside me screamed. No guilt. No panic. No voice telling me I'd abandoned someone. Just a quiet certainty. I wasn't running away. I was choosing where I belonged. I drove to Robert's basement the following Tuesday. The door opened before I knocked. "You're early," Robert said. I smiled. I know. He stepped aside. Come in. Liam was already there. He looked different. More confident. Less afraid. He pointed toward the heavy bag. I've been practicing. I can see that. He grinned. Robert says I'm getting better. He's right. Liam looked at me. I don't want to be like Yan. You don't have to be. How do I make sure? I thought for a moment. Learn control. He nodded. What's the difference? I looked at the bag. Power is what you can do. I looked back at him. Control is deciding whether you should. He thought about that, then stepped toward the bag. I watched him strike. Once. Twice. 3 times. Not wildly. Not angrily. Controlled. And I realized something. Maybe this was why Robert had brought me here. Not to turn me back into a soldier. Not to make me stronger. To teach me that the part of me I'd been trying to bury could still be useful. Just differently. Months passed. My nightmares didn't disappear. Neither did the scars. My knee still hurt on cold mornings. Sometimes a helicopter overhead still made my heart race. Sometimes I woke up sweating. But I stopped treating those moments like failures. I learned to breathe. Look around. Feel the floor beneath my feet. Name what was real. Then let the memory pass. My therapist said something one afternoon that stayed with me. You've spent a long time surviving. I looked at her. Maybe it's time to start living. I didn't have an answer. Not then. But I was beginning to understand. Living didn't mean becoming the woman I had been before the army. That woman was gone. Living meant becoming someone new, without being ashamed of everything that had shaped her. One evening, Robert gave me the photograph of my father. The same one I'd seen the day he told me Arthur had saved his life. You keep it, he said. I shook my head. It's yours. He smiled. It was. He placed it in my hand. Now it's yours. I looked at my father's face. He was younger in the photograph. Dust-covered. Tired. Smiling. I ran my thumb along the edge. He never told me. He never told anybody much. I smiled. That sounds like him. Robert sat beside me. You know why I remember your father? Because he saved you. Yes. He paused. But not just because of that. I looked at him. He never asked whether I deserved saving. My eyes filled. He just showed up. That sentence stayed with me. Showed up. That was what my father had done. That was what I had done for people overseas. And somehow, somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten that I deserved the same thing from myself. I didn't need to punish myself for surviving. I didn't need to prove I was strong. I didn't need Yan to admit I had beaten him. I didn't need my mother to approve of the woman I'd become. I didn't even need the world to understand. I knew. That was enough. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I waited for the ringing. Nothing. I waited for the memories. Nothing. I got dressed, made coffee, walked outside. The sky was gray-blue over Ohio. My car was cold. I started the engine. For a moment, I sat there with both hands on the steering wheel. These were the same hands that had once pressed against David's wounds. The same hands that had held weapons. The same hands Yan had tried to provoke. The same hands my father had told me to use to protect people. They were scarred. They weren't perfect, but they were mine. I pulled onto the road. The town slowly disappeared behind me. The sun began rising over the trees. And for the first time in 14 months, I wasn't waiting for something terrible to happen. I wasn't listening for helicopter blades. I wasn't expecting a flashback. I wasn't wondering whether someone would call me broken. I was simply driving. That was when I finally understood what Robert had been trying to teach me. I didn't have to become the woman I was before. I didn't have to become a different woman either. I only had to stop being ashamed of the one who survived. The scars would stay. The memories would stay. David would always be part of my story. So would Arthur. So would my mother. Even Yan. But none of them got to decide what happened next. That belonged to me. I looked at the sunrise through the windshield. For 14 months, I'd been afraid of silence. Now I understood why. Silence gave me nothing to fight. No enemy. No emergency. No one to save. Just myself. And maybe that was the hardest battle of all. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I turned the radio off. The car became completely quiet. No voices. No static. No helicopter. No screaming. Just the sound of the tires moving across the road. I smiled. I had spent years using my hands to save everyone else. Now I was finally learning how to use them to save myself. I kept driving. The road stretched ahead. The morning light grew brighter. And for the first time since I came home, I didn't feel like a soldier trying to survive civilian life. I didn't feel like a daughter trying to earn her mother's approval. I didn't feel like a broken woman waiting for someone to fix her. I was Anna. Still scarred. Still healing. Still carrying memories. But finally free to decide what they meant. I had spent 14 months believing that being alone meant I'd been abandoned. I finally understood the difference. Being abandoned is something someone does to you. Being alone can be something you choose. I looked once more at the empty road ahead. And for the first time in my life, being alone didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a choice.